Okay, so I'm going to cover the first video of the TED Talk extra credit assignment. So, for a brief summary of what the video covered, the video pretty much was given by a mother of three boys. She talks about various different aspects of parenting and a study that was conducted in Britain that pretty much discussed why children end up the way that they do in their adult lives, and if the parenting aspect, from the ages of born until 18 and adolescence, has an effect on their adult lives. And she also discusses how their financial state of when the child is born into, so pretty much if the child is born into poverty or not, is most likely a ginormous determining factor of how the child will end up in their adult lives rather than the parenting aspect itself. It also talks about how she says that there is no right way to parent, there is no role book to follow, and how most of the time parents, they just kind of go along with what they try to think that is going to have the best outcome with the child. And some of the main talking points that she made were that, again, that there was no guide that the parent follows, and that where the child comes from inevitably has probably one of the biggest impacts on the child than anything else. And she also talks about the biggest factor of the child ending up the way it is of course the financial state that the child is born into, which a lot of the time is not in the parents' hands of when their child is born into, financially speaking, because that a lot of the time has to do with their parents' financial stability at the moment, the economy, or job opportunities, things like that. And it also talks about how, even though the financial situation is a ginormous determining factor, it actually is not the only way to determine how the child is going to end up being engaged and interested in your child's life, through the entirety of it growing up from when it's 5 years old to when it's 15 years old, will also have a positive impact on them. She also discussed how the study showed that although this is obviously in theory that this will have a ginormous positive impact if you actively talk to your child, there is no scientific research backing up if that will actually have a positive impact, but she discusses how it's not going to have a negative impact. So that's why that more parents, no matter what financial situation that they are in, should really try and engage more with their children's lives. And the main problem that this study is addressing is that children end up on difficult paths in their adult lives, and why is that, and how to ensure that children don't fall through the cracks, in adolescence and eventually leading up to their adult lives and starting their own independent lives away from their parents, and if parenting has an effect on where they end up, or if it is just completely determined by the actual child itself, or the environment around it. And the two main solutions to the problem that we are addressing are, number one, again, being financially comfortable. And she also said how, it would be great if a child can choose their parents. And obviously that's not possible. So this is more of a luck of the draw. You kind of get what you get, and that's that. And pretty much just don't be born into poverty. But that's not really a choice that the child can make. And then, of course, the second solution, which is a solution that a lot more parents can try and alleviate and fix, which is to be engaged and active in the child's life throughout their entire life, from when that's 3 and 5 to 13 and 15. And reassuring them so that they can excel in life and know that they have a support system to further their adult lives and become more financially independent, and not not become what they were born into. And this solution is obviously the more control solution that the parents can control, and it's effective because it allows parents to watch for the signs, whether that's 5-year-old talking or 15-year-old talking. the parents are able to see which signs, if the child is starting to veer off of a path that the parents obviously know is not going to end up in the child's favor, and they can watch for the signs to let them know where support is needed, whether that's academically, or whether that's psychologically or socially or things like that. It just helps the parent to try and point out the problems before they actually are made into a problem that will inevitably be a lot harder to fix if the child is 18, 19, 20 and already has an established formal living in their minds. And some of the takeaways that the video gave me is, your situation is what it is. You can't really choose your parents. You can't choose which financial situation you're born into. However, if you follow the engagement and activities within the kid's life, they have a much better chance of not ending up in poverty in their adult life, just because they know that they will have support in academically, whether that's going to college or getting a job or whatever, in their future. And then to address the obvious issue of children living in poverty, a lot of schools nowadays can help children living in poverty. There's a lot of different resources, scholarships, grants, different food outlets provided by the school that can help children living in poverty, so that they know that even though their financial situation is not the best, and especially compared to, I'm assuming, other peers at their school that probably were born more comfortably financially, the school will help them to try and keep them on the path of getting a proper education, even though it is not deemed right, because of where they were born into. Um, and the textbook discusses ways where impoverished children can be exposed to educational environments that mitigate the damaging effects of poverty, by offering kids opportunities to go to more distinguished schools. If the schools bring in, let's just say, speakers or different organizations or grants or scholarships that will allow the child to eventually, let's just say, go to whether that's like a private high school or obviously college, which is sometimes not even a thought in some of these kids' minds. If they are given the opportunity to go to one of those things, through scholarships, food programs, tutor programs, then that will alleviate the poverty being the number one reason as to why they can't further their education. Um, so that is pretty much what the TED Talk discussed, and that is my main takeaway from the video.